The storm howled through the ruined marketplace, carrying sand and ash through the broken stalls. Once this place had been alive with traders and music. Now it was only a graveyard of empty tables and shattered glass. A single figure moved through the wreckage, human, wrapped in a worn jacket carrying a pack heavier than his own tired body. He paused near a broken wall. The wind had carved holes through the old stone, and inside he saw a faint shadow. He thought it was just debris. But then the shadow moved. Two glowing eyes looked up at him from the darkness. It was a girl. She was not human. Her skin glimmered faintly, pale like the surface of the moon. Her hair was tangled and long, sticking to her thin face. She was curled against the cold wall, shaking. Her clothes nothing more than torn fabric. She looked as if she had not eaten for days. The human stepped closer, his boots crunching against broken glass. "You should not be here," he said. His voice was calm but cautious. In this galaxy, abandoned places always hid danger. The girl lifted her head weakly. Her lips trembled. When she spoke, her words were quiet, broken, but clear enough for him to understand. "Take me, as your servant," she whispered. "I cook, I clean. I stay silent, human. Please, take me." The man froze. He had heard many strange things in his travels, but never this. Her voice was not begging for food. It was begging for chains. He looked around. The storm outside howled louder. The night would only grow colder. She would not survive until morning. He knew it. Still, suspicion burned in his mind. Was this a trick? Was she bait left by raiders? He scanned the ruins, his hand resting on the weapon at his side, but there was nothing. No footprints except his own. No shadows except hers. The girl's hand shook as she tried to crawl closer. He saw marks on her wrists, scars thin and faded as if shackles had once cut into her flesh. She bowed her head low. "I will not speak. I will not complain. I only serve. Just let me live." The human's throat tightened. He had met slaves before, but never one who offered herself so willingly. She was not bargaining for freedom. She was bargaining for survival. For a long moment he said nothing. The storm roared outside, throwing dust into the broken shelter. He looked at her fragile body, her pale skin that almost blended with the ash. She was shaking so hard her bones might break. Finally, he pulled off his pack and set it down. He took out a thermal blanket and threw it over her shoulders. The girl flinched as if even kindness felt like an attack. But then she clutched the blanket tightly, pulling it around herself. Her glowing eyes stared at him with disbelief. "You can't follow me," he said firmly. "I travel alone." Her lips curved into the faintest broken smile. "Then I will follow." In silence, the human sighed. He had no time for this. He had missions, debts, dangers of his own. But something in her voice, something in those scars made him pause. He could leave her, yes. But when the storm ended, her body would be just another piece of debris in the ruins. He sat down across from her. The fire starter in his hand lit a small flame in a broken pot. The girl gasped softly at the warmth, moving closer. "What's your name?" he asked. Her eyes lowered. "I have no name," she whispered. "Names are for those who are wanted." The fire crackled. Shadows danced across the ruined walls. The human watched her carefully. Her words were strange, heavy with hidden pain. No name, no family, abandoned like garbage in the ruins. The storm outside grew worse. He knew he would have to stay here until morning. He tossed her a food pack. She stared at it, then looked back at him as if waiting for permission. Only when he nodded did she open it. She ate quickly, almost desperately, as if every bite might be her last. He could see more now. The faint lines of tattoos on her neck, symbols of some alien house, maybe a noble one. But they were scratched, half-burned, as if someone had tried to erase them. She caught him looking and pulled the blanket tighter around her. "I serve," she repeated softly. "That is all I am." The human felt unease settle deep in his chest. Who was this girl? Why was she abandoned? And who had given her those scars? He did not know yet. But one thing was clear. By taking pity on her tonight, he had already stepped into a story bigger than himself. The fire hissed. The storm raged. And outside, in the distance, shadows moved in the ash, watching. The storm finally eased by morning, leaving the ruined marketplace silent under a dull gray sky. Ash covered everything like a dirty blanket, and the air was heavy with the smell of burnt stone. The human packed his gear quickly. He wanted to leave this cursed place before scavengers or raiders came. But the girl was still there, wrapped in the thermal blanket he had given her. She looked smaller now, like a shadow against the wall, but her glowing eyes followed his every movement. "You should go," he said, fastening the straps of his pack. Her lips trembled. "Take me," she whispered again. "I cook, I clean. I stay silent, please." He tightened his jaw. "I told you. I travel alone." But the girl pushed herself to her knees. Her body was weak, but her will seemed stronger than her thin frame. She reached for a broken pot, then for the scraps he had left. With shaking hands, she tried to prepare something from it, anything to prove her worth. Her movements were clumsy at first, but he realized she wasn't lying. She really could cook, even with nothing. The smell of something faintly edible rose from the pot. The human frowned. Why was she doing this? Why beg to serve a stranger who could just as easily abandon her? When she was done, she placed the small bowl near him and lowered her head. "See, I can serve. I don't ask for much. Just let me walk behind you. I will not speak unless you command me." He stared at the food. It wasn't much, barely warm and almost tasteless, but it was made with effort, with need. He sat down slowly and ate in silence. The girl's shoulders shook as if waiting for him to scold her. But when he kept eating, she let out a tiny breath of relief. "Why?" he asked at last. "Why do you want this?" "You don't even know me." Her voice cracked like broken glass. "Because no one else will take me. I was left here to die. If you leave me too, then I am already dead." The human felt a knot form in his chest. He wanted to stay distant, to treat her like just another stranger he had crossed paths with. But there was something in her words, something raw and real that refused to let him turn away. Still, caution pulled at him. He leaned closer, watching her eyes. "Who abandoned you? Tell me the truth." The girl flinched. For a long moment she said nothing. Then in a voice almost too soft to hear, she answered. "My family," she whispered. "I was not good enough for them. They said I was useless, better to be thrown away than to shame them." The human felt a chill crawl down his spine. Families could be cruel, yes, but this? Leaving someone to starve in ruins? There was more to the story, he could feel it, but she would not speak further. He studied her closely. Her body bore the scars of hunger. Her wrists bore the marks of chains, and yet her glowing eyes still held a faint spark of life. She lowered her head again. "I am not asking for kindness. I am asking for work. Let me walk with you. If I fail, you can leave me behind." The human rubbed his temples. He did not want a servant. He did not want responsibility. But he also did not want her blood on his hands if he left her here. Finally, he sighed. "One day? You can come with me for one day. After that, we see." The girl's face lit with something he had not seen before. Hope. She bowed low, clutching the blanket tightly. "Yes, human. I will not fail." They walked out of the ruins together. She kept her promise, silent, a few steps behind him, never asking questions. But he noticed small things. When he tripped on loose stones, she quickly cleared the path ahead with her hands. When he paused to rest, she quietly offered him water without being asked. She was trying too hard, as if her very life depended on it. That night when they made camp near a dead tree, he gave her a ration pack. She hesitated before eating, as if waiting for permission. He frowned. "You don't need to act like this," he said. Her eyes lowered. "I do. If I don't, you will send me away." He had no answer for that. Later, as the fire burned low, he noticed her scars again, thin lines circling her arms and ankles, marks of someone who had once been bound tightly. He wanted to ask, but when he turned to her, she was already lying down, clutching the blanket like it was the only thing in her world. The human leaned back, staring at the night sky. A servant? No, she was something else, something broken, something dangerous. And yet he knew this already. Whatever bargain he had made, it was no longer simple. In the distance, unseen to both of them, a set of glowing eyes watched from the trees. Someone or something was following. The night was colder than the human expected. The fire flickered low, barely keeping the shadows away. He sat with his back against the rough trunk of a dead tree, his weapon within reach. The girl lay curled up on the other side of the fire, clutching the blanket he had given her. She had not spoken since evening. At first, the silence felt welcome, but as the hours passed, it grew heavy, filled with unspoken questions. Who was she? Why had her family abandoned her? And why did her words always sound like chains instead of freedom? He tried to rest, but sometime deep into the night he was pulled awake by a sound. A soft cry. He sat up quickly, hand going to his weapon, but it wasn't danger outside the camp, it was the girl. She was shaking in her sleep, whispering broken words. Her hands clawed at the blanket as if it were binding her. "No, don't. Please, I'll obey." Her voice cracked, and then she screamed. The human moved closer, shaking her shoulder. "Wake up," he said sharply. Her eyes shot open, glowing faintly in the firelight. She gasped, her chest rising and falling quickly as if she had just run for miles. Tears streaked her face. For a moment she didn't recognize him. Then she bowed her head low, trembling. "Forgive me," she whispered. I didn't mean to wake you." "I will be silent." "Please don't leave me." The human frowned. "You were dreaming." That wasn't silence. That was fear. She pressed her hands to her face. For a long moment she refused to speak. Then in a broken voice she said, "They tied me down. They told me to stay still. They told me I was useless. When I cried, they called me shame." The fire cracked. The human listened in silence. "I was part of a house," she whispered, her voice trembling. "A noble house. We were meant to be strong, to be proud. But I was different, too weak, too quiet. They said I would bring dishonor. So they left me here. Better to be forgotten." The human's chest tightened. A noble house? That explained the half-burned tattoos on her neck, the strange marks he had noticed. If what she said was true, then she was not just an abandoned servant. She was someone higher, cast down to nothing. He asked carefully, "What house? What was your name before they erased it?" Her glowing eyes lifted to his. They shone with pain and defiance. "I told you," she said softly. "I have no name. Names are for those who belong. I belong to no one." The human exhaled slowly. She was still hiding something, he could feel it. But pressing her further would only drive her deeper into fear. Instead, he said, "You don't need to beg me. I don't want a servant. I don't need one. If you stay with me, it's not because you serve. It's because you live." Her lips trembled. She almost smiled, but it broke before it formed. "You say that now," she whispered. "But when you learn the truth, you will leave me too." The fire burned lower, throwing long shadows across the camp. The human leaned back, staring at the night sky. He had seen many broken people in his travels, slaves, orphans, soldiers left behind. But this girl was different. Her wounds were not just on her body. They were carved into her soul. He should have kept his distance. He should have walked away. But something about her pain pulled at him like gravity. As the fire faded, the forest around them grew darker. A faint rustle moved through the trees. The human stiffened, gripping his weapon. He scanned the shadows but saw nothing. The girl noticed too. Her body went still, her glowing eyes narrowing. She leaned closer to him, whispering, "They're here." His blood ran cold. "Who?" She shook her head quickly, clutching the blanket tighter. "Not yet, but soon. They will come. They always come." The human kept his weapon ready through the night. He did not sleep again. By morning, the forest was quiet, but the unease lingered. The girl walked behind him, silent as ever, but he could feel her fear pressing against him like an unseen weight. She was hiding something dangerous, and though he wanted answers, he realized something worse. If he kept her with him, her shadows would soon become his own. Still, when he looked back at her, small, fragile, clutching the blanket as if it was her only anchor, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. But somewhere in the trees, beyond their sight, another set of eyes was watching. And whoever it was, they were getting closer. The forest path stretched long and quiet. Leaves crunched under the human's boots, but behind him, the alien girl's steps were almost soundless. She kept her promise, always a few paces behind, never speaking unless he spoke first. At first, the silence was welcome, but now it began to feel strange. Too controlled. Too heavy. By midday, the human stopped at a stream to refill his water flask. The girl quickly moved ahead of him, kneeling by the rocks. She rinsed the flask, filled it carefully, and then handed it back with lowered eyes. Not a word passed her lips. "You don't need to act like this," the human said, frowning. Her eyes flickered up for a second, then fell again. "I serve," she whispered softly. "That is all I know." The human studied her. The way she moved. The way she always watched his needs before her own. It was more than just training. It was survival. But there was something else. She seemed to sense things before they happened. When he slipped on a whetstone, she had already stretched out her hand to steady him, as if she knew it would happen. When a bird suddenly flew from the trees, startling him, she hadn't flinched. She had already turned her head to where it would come from. It wasn't normal. That night, when they made camp, he couldn't ignore it any longer. The firelight cast long shadows as he spoke. "You can sense things," he said. Before they happen, the girl froze. For a heartbeat, her glowing eyes widened in fear. Then she lowered her head quickly. "No, human. I only serve. Don't lie to me," he said firmly. "I've seen it." She hugged the blanket tighter as if it could shield her from the truth. For a long moment, she said nothing. Finally, in a voice so low it was almost swallowed by the fire, she whispered, "It is not safe to tell." The human leaned forward. "Safe from who?" She shook her head. Her thin frame trembled, but her words were steady. "If they know I still have it, they will find me. They will take me back. Or kill me." The fire crackled. The human waited. Slowly, she lifted her hand. Her fingers traced patterns in the dirt. Circles, lines, symbols that glowed faintly before fading away. Not human symbols. Alien, old and strange. The human felt his heart beat faster. "You're not just abandoned," he said. "You were hiding." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "I was born with a gift," she admitted. "My house feared it. They called it a curse. They said no daughter of theirs should carry it. So they bound me. They silenced me. And when they grew tired of chains, they left me to die." The human clenched his fists. A gift, a curse, whatever it was, it had cost her everything. She looked at him desperately. "Please, human, do not tell anyone. If they hear, they will come. They always come." The memory of rustling in the trees returned to him. He had thought it was animals, scavengers. But now, maybe not. Maybe someone had already been following them, waiting for her to reveal herself. He took a deep breath. "Your secret is safe with me. But you need to understand, if we're traveling together, I need the truth. No more hiding." Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like she would argue. But then she bowed her head low, whispering, "Yes, human. I will not hide from you." That night, as the fire burned low, he watched her. She lay curled against the blanket, but her fingers traced invisible patterns in the air as she dreamed. Her body twitched slightly, as if sensing things in her sleep. The human knew then. She wasn't just a servant, and she wasn't just abandoned. She was dangerous, not because she meant harm, but because others would hunt her for what she carried inside. And yet, as he looked at her small, fragile frame, he also knew something else. Whatever secret she carried, he could not leave her now, but deep in the forest. Unseen by either of them, the watchers grew bolder. A mark was made on a tree. A signal passed from one shadow to another. The hunters were closer than ever. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped behind jagged hills. The human walked with steady steps, but his hand never left the grip of his weapon. For hours he had felt it. The faint prickle at the back of his neck. The weight of unseen eyes following them. The girl walked silently behind him as always, clutching the blanket, her glowing eyes lowered. But every so often she would glance at the shadows between the trees. She knew. She had sensed it before he did. By the time they stopped to make camp, the forest was too quiet. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Only silence pressed in from every side. The human built the fire small, barely enough to warm them. His voice was low but firm. "Tell me the truth. Who's following us?" The girl froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her trembling fingers twisted the edge of the blanket. Finally, in a whisper, she answered, "The hunters." The human's eyes narrowed. Hunters for what? She looked at him with fear that burned brighter than the fire. "For me." The fire cracked, and before he could ask more, a voice came from the darkness. "There she is." Figures stepped out from the trees. Tall, armored, carrying blades that shimmered in the faint light. Their eyes glowed faintly like hers, but colder, sharper. The girl gasped and dropped to her knees. Her voice was a broken cry. "Please." "No." The leader of the hunters stepped forward, his armor scratched with the marks of old battles. His voice was smooth, filled with contempt. "Run away. Did you think you could hide forever? Did you think we would not find you?" The human raised his weapon. "Stay back." The hunters laughed, their voices cruel. "And who are you, human?" "Just another fool she has tricked." Hand her over. Walk away. Live. The girl clutched the blanket tighter, shaking her head. Don't give me back, please, they will kill me. Or worse. The human looked at her, small, broken, terrified, and then at the hunters, their blades gleaming. His choice weighed heavy, but deep down he already knew. I don't hand over people, he said coldly. The leader's smile twisted. Then you will die with her. The hunters moved fast, circling the camp. The human fired first, his weapon spitting light into the dark. One hunter fell, but the others pressed forward. Blades clashed against stone, sparks flying. The human fought hard, but they were many. And then something strange happened. The girl, still on her knees, raised her hands. Her glowing eyes burned brighter, and lines of light traced across her skin. The ground trembled, the fire roared higher, and the hunters staggered back in shock. She still has it, one of them hissed. The cursed gift? The leader's expression twisted with fury. Stop her. But it was too late. A wave of unseen force burst outward from the girl, knocking two hunters off their feet. The human shielded his eyes, stunned by the power pouring out of someone who had promised only silence. The girl collapsed, panting, her strength almost gone. But she had bought him a moment. He grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. Run! He shouted. Together they broke through the circle. Blades slashed the air around them, but the human fought with desperate strength, forcing a path through. The girl stumbled, weak from what she had unleashed, but she clung to him as he dragged her through the trees. Behind them, the hunters shouted, their voices echoing through the forest.
She cannot escape.
Bring her back alive. Branches whipped past, roots clawed at their feet, but the human never stopped. His grip on her arm was iron, his will sharper than any blade. He had made his choice. When they finally collapsed near a ravine, the girl was shaking violently. Tears streaked her pale face. You should have left me. You should have given me to them. The human knelt beside her, breathing hard. I don't abandon people. Not to monsters like that. Her glowing eyes met his, wide with disbelief. For the first time since he found her, she looked not like a servant, but like someone who dared to hope. But hope was fragile. In the distance, the hunters' voices still echoed. They had not given up. They would not stop. The human stared into the darkness, weapon in hand. The girl pressed against him, whispering, They know now. They will hunt us forever. He tightened his grip. Then let them come. The night closed in around them, filled with danger, filled with secrets still unspoken. And somewhere deep inside, the human knew. This was no longer just survival. This was war. The night dragged on, heavy and endless. The human and the alien girl crouched near the ravine, hidden under twisted roots. The girl's body trembled, not only from exhaustion but from fear. Her glowing eyes dimmed, her strength almost drained after unleashing that strange force. The human kept watch. Every snap of a branch, every whisper of wind made his hand tighten around his weapon. The hunters were still out there. He could feel them moving in the dark, searching. You should sleep, he whispered to her. She shook her head weakly. If I sleep, they will take me. They won't, he said firmly. Not while I'm here. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She only clutched his sleeve as if it was the only anchor keeping her alive. The human looked at her scars, at her fragile body. She had been abandoned, hunted, called a curse by her own people, and yet inside her burned something powerful, something others feared enough to kill for. The hunters' voices grew closer. There, one shouted. The human cursed under his breath. He pulled the girl to her feet, but her legs barely held. He lifted her onto his back without hesitation. She was light, too light, as if years of hunger had hollowed her out. He ran through the trees, his boots pounding against the earth. The hunters followed, their glowing eyes flashing like predators in the night. Blades cut the branches around him, voices mocking him. You cannot save her, human, the leader roared. She belongs to us. She always will. The human's jaw clenched. Not anymore, he muttered. At a narrow pass between two cliffs, he stopped running. His chest heaved, his lungs burned, but his eyes were steady. He set the girl down gently against a rock. She tried to speak, but he raised a hand. Stay down, he said. The hunters appeared from the shadows, 5 of them, blades drawn. Their leader stepped forward, a cruel grin on his face. You could have walked away, human. You could have lived, but you chose her. Why? The human raised his weapon. Because no one deserves to be abandoned. Not like that, the leader laughed. You are a fool. She is nothing. A broken thing. A curse, maybe, the human said coldly. but she's mine to protect. The hunters lunged. The battle was chaos, light against shadow, blade against fire. The human fought with raw desperation, every strike driven not by duty but by choice. He ducked, rolled, fired. One hunter fell, then another. But they were skilled, trained, relentless. A blade cut across his arm, drawing blood. He gritted his teeth and struck back, knocking the attacker into the cliff wall. Behind him, the girl pressed her hands to the ground, her eyes glowing again. She whispered words in a language older than the trees. Energy rippled through the earth, shaking the stones beneath the hunter's feet. Two stumbled, caught off balance, and the human seized the moment, finishing them before they could rise. Only the leader remained. His blade burned brighter than the others, his step steady and sure. He struck hard, forcing the human back. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying into the night. "You can't win," the leader snarled. "You are only human." The human's breath came harsh and ragged, but his voice was steady. "That's enough." With one last burst of strength, he forced the blade aside and drove his weapon into the hunter's chest. The leader staggered, eyes wide with shock, before collapsing to the ground. Silence fell. The forest seemed to breathe again. The human dropped to his knees, sweat and blood mixing on his skin. He turned to the girl. She was pale, her energy spent, but her eyes glowed softly as they met his. "You fought for me," she whispered, voice shaking. "You could have left. You should have left." He shook his head. "I made my choice." Her tears glistened in the firelight. Slowly she reached out, her scarred hand trembling as it touched his. "Then I am yours. Not as a servant, not as a curse, but because you chose me." The human looked at her, broken, hunted, yet still alive, and something inside him shifted. She was no longer just a burden. She was no longer just survival. She was someone worth fighting for. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. Killing these hunters would not end it. There would be more. She carried a secret that others would never allow to live free. The night was quiet, but it was only the calm before the storm. Dawn crept slowly over the forest, painting the broken branches in pale gold. Smoke still lingered in the air from the battle, and the ground bore the scars of blades and fire. The human stood among the fallen hunters, his weapon heavy in his hand, his body aching from wounds. Beside him, the alien girl sat on a stone, wrapped in the worn blanket. Her glowing eyes reflected the rising sun, but they were filled with something deeper than fear, shame and wonder mixed together. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the wind moved, carrying away the last whispers of the night's violence. At last, the girl broke the silence. "You should not have done this," she whispered. Her voice was soft but sharp with guilt. "You killed for me. Now others will come. Stronger ones. They will never stop." The human wiped blood from his arm and looked at her calmly. "Then let them come." Her lips trembled. Why choose me?" "I told you. I am only a servant. Nothing more." He shook his head slowly. "No, you're not." Her eyes widened, glowing brighter as she tried to understand. "You were born into a house that feared you." The human continued. "They tried to erase your name, your gift, your life. But that doesn't make you nothing. That doesn't make you a servant. That makes you free." The girl's breath caught in her throat. "Free?" she repeated, as if the word itself was foreign. "Yes," he said firmly. "You chose to live. You chose to survive, and now you can choose who you want to be, not what they forced you to be." Her hands shook as she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. For so long she had known only chains, commands, and silence. The thought of choice, of freedom, felt heavier than any shackle. "I don't know how," she whispered. The human crouched before her, meeting her glowing eyes. "Then learn. With me." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her pale cheeks. Slowly, she lowered herself to her knees before him. Her voice trembled. "All my life I was told to bow, to serve, to obey. But this is different. You gave me life when I had none. You gave me hope when I thought I was dead. Let me stay, not as your servant, but as someone who belongs to you by choice." The human hesitated. For a moment he saw her not as the fragile girl in chains, but as something more, someone with power, someone with will, someone who could become stronger than the house that abandoned her. He reached out, lifting her chin gently so her eyes met his. "Then you don't kneel. Not to me, not to anyone. Walk beside me. That's enough." Her breath caught, and for the first time she truly smiled. It was small, shaky, but real. The sun rose higher, and for a brief moment the world seemed quiet. But the silence was broken by a distant sound. The faint rumble of engines, the whisper of ships moving across the sky. The girl stiffened, fear flashing in her eyes. "They're coming," she whispered. The human looked up at the sky, narrowing his eyes. Dark shapes glimmered far above the trees, moving like shadows against the clouds. He tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind already calculating. The girl touched his arm, her voice urgent. "You cannot fight them all, even you. Cannot stand against what they will send." "Maybe not," he admitted. His voice was calm, but steel lay beneath it. "But I don't need to fight them all. I only need to keep you alive." Her glowing eyes softened. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder, whispering words she had never dared before. "Then I will not be silent anymore. If I must fight, I fight with you." The human wrapped his arm around her thin frame, steady and unyielding. "Then we fight together." The rising sun cast its light over the battlefield, over the fallen hunters, over the broken past that had bound her. For the first time in her life, she was not a servant. She was not abandoned. She was chosen, and for the first time in his long journey, the human realized this was not just survival. This was destiny. The forest shivered as ships descended from the sky, their shadows falling across the earth. The battle was not over. The war had just begun, but side by side, human and alien stood ready, no longer master and servant, but equals against the galaxy itself.